Hello, you're joined by Emma today on your Let's Do Peer Facilitation, and we have
Heidi Tweedy, I'm from Murray Wellbeing Hub.
I'm Hayley, I'm the development worker for the peer community in Edinburgh and I work for Health in Mind.
I'm Jeanette Allen, I lead the North Ayrshire Wellbeing and Recovery College for RAMH.
I'm Graham Kai and I am a volunteer with Bipolar Aberdeen.
We felt we'd put together our thoughts around how to peer facilitate and how this may help you in your group as a peer facilitator. For instance, you may be running a group just now, or you may just want to dip your toes into it and start running a group. This is a good place to start. But what I'd like to ask and open to the group is, how has this experience been for you guys?
It's been great to hear how other people do things, and yeah, that there are, some things are slightly different about the way people have been talking about doing things in other areas. Some things are obviously, lots of things are very similar. And it's just nice as well to be open to hearing different ways of doing things and being able to hopefully bring some of it in here and reflecting on why we do the stuff that we do the way we do it.
It's been very interesting to work with like-minded colleagues and cross-fertilise our ideas and come up with a really useful resource. I'm involved in the Recovery College. We have a peer pathway and we teach a peer facilitation course. And it's been really interesting to test out some of our ideas with the peer facilitators in North Ayrshire. And it's been an excellent experience co-producing a resource together.
I think that's what's really beneficial about this resource and makes it so special. It was a learning opportunity for all of us, but also it was an opportunity as well for other people to learn from our experiences.
I think what's really important for me is, like you said, Emma, I've been doing this for quite a wee while in terms of trying to, support best practice and also work at a national level. But what's been great is to work with a group of people that are equally passionate, even though they've got very different sort of roles and remits. So although I work quite strategically, we've got members of this group that are very practical and hands-on and that are currently doing that one-to-one work, like for Graham, for example, which is fantastic. And so I think what's happened is that whilst I have those people that I see every day within the team at Murray Wellbeing Hub, this is a very different space of true mutuality. So we're living the peer values. Everybody is very supportive. So it's a really chime-creating space. So we do feel connected. It is hopeful. We all have our different identities and it is meaningful because it's actually coming to a head. There's something that we can use. So for me, it's quite a commitment of time to do something like this. And obviously it's a resource that we're all volunteering to take our time to do. But you see, it helps to achieve the objectives of our organisation as well as everybody else, because if we do things that are good for peer support nationally, it's good for people in Murray. But also, if we collaborate together on a resource, it's something that I can use internally as well. And what I love is that we'll all be using this resource in our different organisations and we'll interpret it differently. But that gives a kind of communal feel, a connection, that peer support is not just in one area. And you feel like you're part of a colleague base of peers right across Scotland.
Well, I think it's made me realise, that the power of peer and the connectedness is growing around Scotland, and it's with bringing such a dynamic group together to work on a resource that I know with Bipolar Aberdeen, we're going to use that resource and kind of improve the peer facilitation that we have, and it's also an opportunity to bring other facilitators in, effectively give them this information, train them effectively up to deliver peer support. But it's been really good to work with like-minded people and to know that, like Heidi was saying, and Jeanette, on a national level, peer is starting to rise and people are starting to realize the power and how important that lived experience is to people. And it's just been an amazing experience. So I thank the team. Thank you very much for that.
And I think I want to thank everybody for the input that they have had, because I think, thinking back to 10 months ago when, we were asked to put together a peer facilitation guide, and it almost felt, it felt quite overwhelming because it felt a huge responsibility to be able to go out there and produce something that meant something for all across Scotland, whether you were just starting out as a peer facilitator or whether or not you were running peer groups and just wanted a little bit of support for the peer facilitator and what that looked like. And being able to join and have everybody collectively around that table, virtually albeit, but being able to have people from all walks of life, all experience, and be able to put that together it just broke and made that experience so much more beneficial. What would be, if you could give your top tips to anybody out there wanting to dip into doing peer facilitation for the first time, or just wanting to maybe, let's review our peer facilitation material, what would be your top tips?
Well, I really think if you're organising a group, then you should be looking at something like a big folklore of Scottish traditions is having a nice cuppa. So maybe think about having refreshments. I know it sounds very simple, and it's like, well, why? But it's a good way to open conversation and make people relaxed. So that would be one of my top tips. And another one, I guess, would be avoid the use of clinical terminology at all costs, because we're not creating a clinical environment. We're not offering a clinical service to peers, and a lot of peers they join the groups to escape the clinical recovery model and more experience the strength of the common humanity and what peer support is about, whilst they're in the driving seat of their own recovery. So I guess it's about exploring different avenues and giving things a try. You can't say there's a right way or there's a wrong way, but some peer groups can be more successful, and there's a lot of opportunities out there. So I guess one final tip would be to kick off a peer support group session, with short introductions from the facilitator. It can increase an element of connectedness, and when each participant is involved with discussions. So, and also maybe something like a subtle group icebreaker, again, that encourages participation. So that would be my top tips from actually delivering peer work.
I think one of the things, to build on what Graham was saying, is that it's really important that you have the why in your head. Why are you doing this? And checking in with yourself in terms of the values of as a peer. Because are you really wanting to take that mutual, intentional, authentic space? Is this actually about a career progression? Is this actually about provision of service that should be there? Are you the right person to do that? Because you're the key resource if you're the person holding it or the organisation wanting to do it. So checking in with that first of all. But also, I think the next thing that's almost exactly the same level of importance is the how. So Graham talked there about the importance of food, but things like venue space is very, very important. And I think some people, what they do is they put something on that suits other people and not necessarily themselves, or suits themselves and not necessarily other people. And it must do both. It is a peer space, so it must suit everyone. And the final thing that I think is really important in that is the what, like the filling. Peer support will always improve the mental health of people if it's done to a values base, no matter the topic. So it might be that, yours, just because it's about improving mental health, does not mean that has to be the topic. It can be about knitting. It can be about a long-term condition. It can be about being a parent. And it's really important that how is about having that structure, staying focused, so people know what's going to be happening, but at the same time having space for that looseness where friendships might come to the side of it and things like that.
Having a group agreement would be one of the basics. It sounds incredibly basic, and some people might not call it a group agreement. Some people might call it a support agreement, or code of conduct. I've heard it called lots of different things. But there needs to be some sort of grounding for the group to come back to understand how to communicate with each other, what sort of space it is, just so that's clear to everybody, especially to new members. I think whenever I've done sort of sessions or trainings with people and they're talking about problems, I feel like 9 times out of 10 what we end up finding out is that group doesn't have a group agreement, and that's where a lot of that is stemming from. And for that group agreement to be like a co-produced thing, seeing as this is co-production week that we're putting this out in, that it's not just the group facilitators telling everybody else what to do, that it's produced with the whole group, so that it's clear to everybody and it's in a language that people understand, and that they, you know, that everyone buys into it and agrees to it. So yeah, so having a group agreement. I guess another one would be for you as a peer facilitator to be looking after yourself as well. You know, it isn't about you, yeah, sort of giving your all to everybody and never getting anything back. There's meant to be a mutuality to it. Yeah, so it's okay for you to also be getting some support from the group and also from your co-facilitators, if you have them. Hopefully you do. Or you know, getting support from an organization if you're part of an organization. And then finally, and I guess this is similar to some of what Heidi and Graham are saying, being clear on what you are. You know, you're a peer support group. You don't have to be a crisis service. You don't have to be, you know, a clinical service. That's not what it is. It's a peer support space. And for me, that the key sort of element of a peer support space is about connection and building connection between people.
I think building on what my colleague said, which has all been very helpful, is to hold that space, that safe space with a beginning and an end. And I really like to encourage a nice check-in and a check-out. And the check-in should be something that's like a powerful question. If you ask the question, how are you feeling today? You will get a big, long answer. And it might not be in the direction that you want to go. But if you ask a question, something like, in the past week, when you've had a better day or a good day, what were you doing and how did that make you feel? That's a different question that you get a different answer and a different response. Then you're building on something that takes you forward. And there's an assumption built in that, is that people have better times in the week. You know, there are better times. And then a checkout, always a checkout that everybody's voice is heard, to share something. What's something you've learned today or that you're taking away? But it's short. It's like a one-word answer, or it's a brief thing. It's not a big, long story. And that's a bit like bookends. If you have a check-in and a checkout, holding that time and the safe space in between, then I think that's it's like tying up a parcel with a ribbon, that people know where they're going. And I suppose my other top tip is about listening. But listening to hear, not listening for the next space that you can fill. And to use the language of the person speaking rather than reframing that, is to use that language and just hear what people are saying, and encourage everybody to have a say and have a contribution, and making sure everyone, that space is evened out so that there's not one person that's dominating.
Thank you very much, Jeanette. And that features as well within the new learning resource that will be coming out for people to dive into and use. So thank you very much for joining us today. And we hope that we have whet your appetite, and hopefully you'll be able to download the resource, and it's beneficial for you and your community and what you do. If you do want to have any more information, please go to our website or contact anybody who has been involved in this resource. I'm more than sure anybody would be willing to help, because together, collectively, if we do come together, the more we highlight the power in peer, and especially the power behind peer facilitation. So thank you very much for joining us.